Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Plain of Jars, Laos's ancient megalithic mystery. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In the upland plains of Xieng Khouang province in northern Laos, thousands of stone jars, some weighing up to 14 metric tons, are scattered across the landscape in clusters of hundreds. They range from 1 to 3 meters in height, have been carved from a variety of stone types, and have been there for at least 2,000 to 3,000 years. No written record of who made them survives. No living cultural tradition provides a clear explanation of their function. The Plain of Jars is one of Asia's most mysterious archaeological sites, and one of the most dangerous, since the Xieng Khouang Plateau was one of the most heavily bombed regions on Earth during the secret war in Laos between 1964 and 1973. Millions of unexploded ordnance items remain in the soil, complicating archaeological work and making portions of the jar fields inaccessible to this day. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the global puzzle of unexplained ancient construction, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Catastrophism, the idea that Earth's geological and cultural history has been shaped by sudden, violent events rather than purely gradual processes, was once the dominant paradigm in science. It was then largely displaced by uniformitarianism, the principle championed by Charles Lyell in the 19th century that the present is the key to the past, and that change occurs slowly and continuously. The pendulum has since swung back. Modern geology and astronomy have confirmed that catastrophic events, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, rapid climate shifts, have profoundly shaped Earth's surface and life upon it. The Chicxulub impact that ended the Cretaceous is the most famous example, but it is not alone. The Younger Dryas cooling event 12,000 years ago caused radical shifts in human habitat within decades, not millennia. The Bronze Age collapse 3,000 years ago ended multiple interconnected civilizations in a generation. These events matter for archaeology because they reset the evidence. A major catastrophe does not merely destroy a civilization, it destroys the record of that civilization. Survivors carry only what they can remember, and memory degrades with each generation. After a few centuries, the grandchildren of survivors have myths where their grandparents had engineering manuals. What archaeologists find when they excavate ancient sites is not the full picture. It is the fragment that survived the last catastrophe. The full picture may be forever gone, preserved only in the ambiguous traces that puzzle researchers to this day. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter, the core evidence surrounding the Plain of Jars. Laos's ancient megalithic mystery is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The stone jars of the Plain of Jars are found at approximately 90 sites across the Xieng Khouang plateau, with the largest concentrations at 3 main sites now accessible to visitors. Thousands of jars survive. The original number was likely much greater before centuries of disturbance, including wartime bombing. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the jars range from less than 1 meter to approximately 3 meters in height, and from a few hundred kilograms to approximately 14 metric tons in weight. They were carved from a variety of stone types, including sandstone, granite, and limestone. Some have disc-shaped lids, though most lids have been lost. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine radiocarbon dating of organic material found inside some jars has return dates ranging from approximately 1500 BC to 800 AD, indicating a long period of use. Most dates cluster around 500 BC to 500 AD. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the mortuary function of the jars is the most widely accepted explanation. Archaeological excavations have found human bones, teeth, burial goods, including iron and bronze items, ceramics, and glass beads in and around the jars. The jars may have served as primary or secondary burial containers. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of local Lao legends attribute the jars to a race of giants who used them as drinking vessels, or to an ancient king named Kun Juem who commissioned them to store rice wine to celebrate a military victory. These legends reflect the cultural memory of a tradition that is no longer living in the region. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: the quarries where the jars were carved have been identified in some cases. Transport of the largest jars from quarries several kilometers away required significant organized labor, consistent with a society capable of large-scale communal undertakings. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. Equally puzzling to investigators, the Plain of Jars was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2019. Demining operations by Mines Advisory Group and other organizations continue, gradually opening more of the jar sites to archaeological investigation. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodologic. Al-era, each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the plain of jars, Laos's ancient megalithic mystery. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the jars served as mortuary containers, either as coffins for primary burial or as receptacles for secondary burial, in which bones were cleaned and redeposited. The archaeological evidence of human remains and burial goods in and around the jars is consistent with this function. This is the mainstream interpretation. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the jars were used for the storage and fermentation of rice, wine, or other food products as part of a redistributive economy, with mortuary use being a secondary or later function. The size of the largest jars, far larger than needed for a single burial, is consistent with large volume storage. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the jars were monuments to ancestors or territorial markers, placed in the landscape to define and sanctify specific areas. Their distribution across a wide plateau suggests territorial as well as funerary significance. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the plain of jars, Laos's ancient megalithic mystery, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes archaeological excavations at jar sites have consistently found human bones, teeth, and burial goods in and around the jars, providing direct evidence of mortuary use. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented the variety of stone types used for different jars within single sites confirms that the jars were transported from multiple quarry sources, implying extended production over time rather than construction of the entire site in one period. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed disc-shaped stone lids found at some jar sites are consistent with containers that were meant to be sealed, supporting either storage or burial functions rather than merely decorative placement. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Plain of Jars, Laos's ancient megalithic mystery. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Plain of Jars is slowly opening to systematic archaeological investigation as demining progresses, and each excavation season adds new data. The mortuary interpretation is becoming increasingly well supported, but the full story of who made the jars, what specific culture they belonged to, and how this tradition related to broader Southeast Asian prehistoric cultures remains to be worked out. The site's combination of antiquity, scale, mystery, and the haunting overlay of 20th century warfare makes it one of the most compelling and complex archaeological landscapes in Asia. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Plain of Jars, Laos's ancient megalithic mystery, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Plain of Jars ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.